So Muse have a ton of iconic piano-based songs. Songs like Sunburn, Newborn, In Your World, and that massive solo from Butterflies and Hurricanes are just a few of their classics. They all have this distinct sound that screams, "This is Muse," and I wanted to explore every single song that features piano to find their similarities and the themes that they shared. So I went back to their very early stuff all the way through to their latest album, and I found 5 techniques that Muse used to write their songs. At the end of the video, I will put all these 5 techniques together to make my own Muse-inspired piano riff, so stick around to check that out. However, without further ado, my name is Billy from Piano and Pies. Let's get stuck in.
Technique 1, chords. Okay, so using chords to make a piano song is, well, pretty common. However, the way that Muse go about using chords is pretty interesting. They use 2 key features, arpeggios and broken chords. Now these are very much interlinked. However, just to describe what they are, an arpeggio or a broken chord is where we take a chord, let's say a C major chord, and we try and break up the notes, let's say C, E, G. Now if you're not a piano player, or if you're not too confident with your notes, that's fine, but basically taking a chord, breaking up the notes in a pattern. That's typically an arpeggio, and a broken chord is kind of the same, but sometimes we might group some of the notes like that. Muse use this a lot. So Sunburn, one of their very early pieces, is a classic example of taking a chord and arpeggiating it. So here's the piano riff. So that piano riff might sound really elaborate and really fancy, but really all that's happening is they're taking 3 or 4 chords and playing a pattern in the right hand. So for example, the first part, this right hand here is playing an E minor chord, but with the high note starting first, then the middle, then the low. They do add a left hand note at the beginning, but really it's just this arpeggio of 1 chord. It then just alternates between another idea down here, before going up to a C chord and playing the same idea. So this right hand is just playing a chord broken up in a pattern, and that is a very, very common thing that Muse do. Newborn is another great example where they use arpeggios and broken chords. Now, what's good about Newborn, they do it slightly different. What they do is they take both hands, they will arpeggiate the chords in both hands, but they will use a method called contrary motion, where one hand plays notes in that direction and the other hand plays it in the opposite direction. So they're going opposite to each other, sometimes in, sometimes out. Here's an example. So just to play the first part slowly, we take this E minor chord, bit of a theme with some of these songs, again more on that later, and they play the E minor notes, going from the lowest, well, the outer note, let's say, to the inner notes, then back out, in, and back out. And they do that for all the other chords. There was an E minor to start, they then go to a B major chord. Hopefully you can see there's the outer notes working in. That's a really, really interesting thing that they did there. Technique 2, minor keys. So Muse use the minor key as well as the harmonic minor key in a lot of their piano-based stuff. If you're not too sure what minor keys are or harmonic minor keys, let's go over to the piano. We have as an example an A minor key here, and A minor has all of the white keys on the piano: A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A. Now that is a very simple minor key. However, they'll often use the harmonic minor key, and all that does is change the 7th note, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is the G, just before you get to the last A, and they sharpen it, they raise it by a semitone. That makes a very distinct sound, and they'll use that note a lot in their chord progressions. Let's use an example. In Your World is a fantastic example. The scale I mentioned earlier, the A harmonic minor with the G sharps, is the key of the song. So watch out for a lot of the white keys, including G sharp. Here we go. So through that, lots of white keys, it's got that sharp in, and that harmonic minor note, that's really special there, that raised seventh, just stands out. If we were to flatten that into the natural minor, it would sound okay, but not as strong as that harmonic minor. It's a really, really interesting technique that Muse have used. So you can see there, I played the G instead of the G sharp, and it didn't sound as strong. That G sharp really just adds a little bit more spice to the track. Now, out of all of the piano-based music that Muse have released, 10 out of the 13 are in either the minor or the harmonic minor scale. That leaves only 3 songs that are in the major key. Those are Starlight, Animals and Ghosts. More on Ghosts a little bit later. Just a side note, I've left out Feeling Good because they're not the original artist, so I won't be making much mention there because they didn't write the song. So the type of key is really important. We use a lot of minor and harmonic minor scales. However, the actual spot of those keys, as in the letters A, B, C sharp, whatever, that's really important as well. And I found something really interesting. A lot of the keys are in E, A, D and G. Now you guitar players might have just perked up a little bit there because that's something really common. I'm going to get to that in a moment. However, the first theory, and this is just a theory, is that it could be to do with Matt Bellamy, the lead singer, his vocal range. Now, Matt Bellamy is an amazing singer with an incredible range. Now, certain singers will sometimes say, I like certain keys, a certain range of notes. However, because Matt Bellamy has such a wide range, I don't really think the key matters too much. What I think is the second reason is E, A, D and G are all open strings on the guitar. Now, this video is all about piano and their piano riffs. What's the connection? So, quite a lot, especially live, and even in a lot of the recordings, there will be a piano riff, and then it will go into something heavier with guitar. And live and on the tracks, Matt Bellamy goes from playing the piano part and maybe singing, into straight away playing the guitar, just like In Your World. What that does, if you can play an interesting riff on the piano and then put that onto the guitar where you use lots of open strings, and what I mean by open strings is playing a string by itself without needing any fingers, that makes life so much easier. And that also helps out the bass player. So being able to go in a key that's easily transferable onto guitar, where you're playing high up and down the fretboard, then if you can help yourself out by being in one of those open string keys, then that helps. 8 out of the 13 tracks where piano plays a massive part use open string keys. That is 61.5%. Now, if you use all of the tracks that use E flat major, which is on guitar, detuning every single string down half a step, which means you can still play open, then that jumps up to 76.9%. That's a lot of tracks that use these open string keys. So for me, I think that's the reason. Let's use an example of that. Let's go back to In Your World by Muse. It starts off with that piano riff, and then it goes to a guitar part. If I was in a different key, let's say F, it would be really difficult to play all those notes. Let's see if I can go from piano guitar and do it. Take 1 that was. Not take 7. That guitar riff would have been made way harder if it wasn't based around the notes of A and the open E. You'll have noticed on the piano part, I was playing lots of E notes there. On the guitar, there's an open E string here, and a lot of the notes go from a finger on the guitar to the open E. Without that, let's say if everything was up a semitone, that'd be really hard. Yeah, I can't do it. Technique 3, the imperfect cadence. So cadences are basically how two chords can relate to each other. And there's lots of different types. The most common is a perfect cadence, where you go from the fifth of a key to the first. Things like this. Now those last two chords were in the key of C major. There was a G going to a C. And it kind of sounds like an ending, the end. And that is a perfect cadence, but Muse don't use a lot of those. What they use is imperfect, where we swap them around, where it can go from the first chord, let's say in C major, it would be C major chord, going to the fifth, G. So let's come up with a chord progression that Muse use where that is applied. We can look at Apocalypse Please, and they have this set of chords. Now that is in the key of F minor, and we have an F minor chord, and then it goes to a C sharp major chord. And that is usually in the key of F minor. It would normally be a C minor, but they've decided to bring in the major, which gives it again that really striking kind of sound. This is one of the opening tracks of the Absolution album, in my opinion the best album, and it's a really kind of big way of bringing in the album. It's really striking, it's really strong, and the imperfect cadence does that job. It doesn't say the end, like a perfect cadence. It says this is the start of something. It kind of has a unfinished quality to it. It feels like there needs to be something else, which inevitably it does. It keeps going back and forth with the root and the fifth, this imperfect style. And it's a really, really common technique that we see in a bunch of their songs. So why did I include this technique? Well, a lot of artists do use this, however, they do it a little bit more common than what I'd expect. And I think the reasons why is that it gives a sense of strength, it gives a sense of power and movement to the piece, and probably most importantly, like an unfinished kind of aspect to that part of the song. It feels like the song is moving, it's going somewhere. So that is a really good thing to use, especially when you have a lot of lively music like they play. Technique 4, busy right hand, lazy left hand. Okay, so I'm not calling Muse lazy at all. However, what I really mean by that is I just wanted to come up with a fun title. So their piano riffs use a lot of right hand action. There's lots of arpeggios, like I discussed earlier. But their left hand will often play single bass notes and let them sustain throughout the main piano part. And that could be for a number of reasons. First of all, it could be just so there's not too much going on. If there's lots of different sounds, it can be hard for the listener to hear what's going on and what they should pay attention to. That's why you don't have usually guitar solos whilst a singer is singing. Another interesting thing is that it opens chords up to inversions. Now, all an inversion is when we take a chord, let's say it's that C major chord again, and we take the lowest note, which is usually the root of the chord, in this example C, and if we move that to the top, let's say, we now have an inversion of C. It's the same chord, it's just inverted into a different order. And we can use the inversions in left hand, where we use, let's say, that E, which is the lower part, in the left hand, and it creates that little bit of a different sound. And Muse will use that not only in their pieces with inversions, but they will use the left hand as a way to slowly descend or ascend up a range of notes, rather than jumping around different bass notes. A great example of that is Ruled by Secrecy, in particular the big piano solo that comes partway through the song. Now there's a lot going on, and I want you to pay attention to this left hand when I'm stretching my hand to play octaves. You'll see it goes from an F to an E to an E flat, then a C. A lot of those notes are very close to each other, and they end up using inversions for the second and third chord. Have a listen first, then we'll break it down. So throughout that, there's an F minor chord, a C major chord which is inverted because the left hand's playing E's. We then have a C minor chord with an E flat in the bass, and then a C major chord in its root position where the C's at the bass. So it starts with the F minor chord, then there's that C with the E in the bass, and we've moved down from F down a semitone down to E. Then down a semitone again to the E flat. Then a small jump down to C major in its root position. So the left hand holding notes is a really common thing. Admittedly, lots of other artists do this, but it's a very common thing that we see in Muse's piece. Technique 5, legato and sustain pedal. So this is a pretty simple tool to use. Now legato is all about smooth notes where the notes feel connected, there's no gaps between them. And Muse use this, I believe, in almost every single piano song that they use. And a way to achieve this legato, smooth type of sound is by using the sustain pedal. If you ever watch a piano player, you'll always see their right foot is on a pedal. That is what we call a sustain pedal, or sometimes a damper pedal. And all that does, it lets a note hold for a bit longer. So without pressing the pedal, if I play a note, it goes away. But if I hold that pedal down, that note sustains. And they use that on almost every track. So let's play around with a couple of tracks where I do and then don't use the sustain pedal, and you'll see how it sounds so different, almost alien-like to what the actual song is supposed to be like. Newborn with, without, very strange. Maybe not a million miles apart, but it sounds a bit disjointed. It doesn't sound together, it doesn't sound smooth. That's why that pedal comes in. One final example, I alluded to it earlier, is Butterflies and Hurricanes. Now there's this massive piano solo. I'm not going to play all of it, but I'll play the first couple of parts, and I'll play it with the sustain pedal. Now, that's going to sound very different when I take away the sustain pedal. Have a listen. And it just sounds a little bit naff. So, sustain pedals, which give this legato feeling, is a very simple, but I think one of the most important techniques that Muse use in their piano-based stuff. So, just before we move on to my own Muse-inspired piano riff, I wanted to mention patrons. People like these guys on the screen. Now, they get a lot of perks. They get this video and other videos a week early. They get their name on the screen, which is pretty cool. They also get chord charts and sheet music of most of the tutorials that I put onto YouTube. So they all come in a handy PDF file, so you can just easily download it. And for this video, they get the sheet music of my own Muse-inspired riff, so you can learn it at home if you fancy doing such a thing. They get a behind-the-scenes video of me making the Muse riff. Now, what you're about to see is kind of just the end product with a couple of little ideas along the way. However, in that bonus video, I go into it into a lot of detail, so if you're interested in that, head on over. And finally, you get extra information on the 5 techniques that I've mentioned, so I'll go into a few extra things that I didn't feel as if fitted into this video. So that's interesting. There's a link in the description to Patreon. Head on over to the £2 tier. However, let's get back to the video and let's see what ideas I've come up with. I quite like that. This kind of descending and then ascending idea. That stands out. Yeah. Okay. I think it's got a bit of a Linkin Park kind of feel to it, more than a Muse riff. I feel like that's a bit too deep. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So there's the harmony behind it. So we've got E minor to C major, technically A minor. Just I'm not using the C note, so I'm kind of making it slightly ambiguous. And then we've got the B. The last part, the 4th part, it should do something different. Maybe go higher.
Oh yeah, that'd be cool. And kind of finishing on that note there to then loop it around up here. Yeah, and then I can just do it an octave higher, the easy way out. So there is my Muse-inspired piano riff. What did you think? I thought it was alright. I don't think it was amazing. Let me know in the comments below. Really interested to see what people think about it. Yeah, please don't slate me too much. I am nothing like Matt Bellamy. If I was, I'd be very, very rich. Now, do you want the guitar version of this, where I go in detail of Muse's guitar riffs? Then if so, let me know in the comments below. A lot of effort went into this video. I had to learn loads of riffs. I had to do a lot of editing. I'm not very fast at editing, so it takes a while. So yeah, like and subscribe if you found this in any way enjoyable. It just, yeah, it gives me a lot of pleasure seeing people like it. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you're interested in the Patreon for the extra bonus content, it's all in the description below. So thanks for watching, guys. I shall see you in the next video.